Hi, and thank you for visiting my channel. For more information, kindly subscribe and follow. Now let's get started. Jey Uso has reacted to Rhea Ripley's message on social media. Courtesy of her Instagram story, the Eradicator wished the former multi-time tag team champion on his birthday. The duo of Jey and Sami Zayn were recently victorious over J.D. McDonough and Finn Balor of the Judgment Day. They have their sights set on the WWE World Tag Team Championship. Meanwhile, Ripley and Damian Priest have also been feuding with their former stablemates and Liv Morgan after being betrayed at SummerSlam. On his Instagram story, Jey had an interesting reaction to Ripley's birthday wish. Check out a screen grab of Jey's Instagram story. On Raw, Jey expressed his interest in challenging Braun Breaker for the Intercontinental Championship. The newly crowned champion has revealed that a tournament will decide his next challenger. Matt Camp believes Rhea Ripley will get the victory for her team at Bash in Berlin at the upcoming Bash in Berlin Premium Live event. Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest will face Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio in a mixed tag team match. Speaking on the Wrestling Mat podcast, former WWE personnel Matt Camp predicted Ripley would secure the victory for her side by pinning Morgan. He said, "I would think you set up the Rhea vs. Liv rematch for Bad Blood, potentially Hell in a Cell. Some kind of big gimmick match. I don't know if you go Priest vs. Dom or Priest vs. Finn next month. But I would have to think that Rhea gets the pin on Liv to set up the rematch." At SummerSlam, Rhea Ripley was betrayed by Dominic Mysterio, who helped Liv Morgan retain the Women's World Championship. On the latest edition of Monday Night Raw, Ripley and Damian Priest were taken out by the Judgment Day. At SummerSlam, Priest was betrayed by his former tag team partner, Finn Balor, who cost him the World Heavyweight Championship against Gunther. Jey Uso sat alone in a dimly lit locker room, the weight of recent events heavy on his shoulders. The room was filled with the sounds of muffled voices and footsteps echoing in the distance, but Jey paid no mind to the hustle and bustle outside. His mind was elsewhere, lost in the chaos that had become his life ever since he made the decision to leave the bloodline. His phone buzzed on the bench beside him, snapping him out of his thoughts. With a sigh, he reached over and picked it up, his eyes widening slightly as he saw the name on the screen, Rhea Ripley. They hadn't spoken much, and their interactions had always been brief, mostly in passing backstage. But something about her caught his attention. Rhea was unlike anyone else in WWE, intense, unpredictable, and fiercely independent. He hesitated for a moment before opening the message, curiosity getting the better of him. The words stared back at him, simple yet loaded with meaning. "Heard you left the bloodline. About time you did your own thing. Respect." Jey's lips curled into a half-smile as he read the message. It was typical of Rhea, straightforward, no nonsense, and with a hint of that rebellious spirit she was known for. He could almost hear her voice saying those words, laced with that familiar edge of defiance. But what intrigued him the most was the last word, respect. Coming from Rhea, that meant something. She wasn't one to throw around compliments or give praise lightly. If she said she respected you, it was because you earned it. Jey leaned back against the wall, his mind racing. Rhea had been making waves in WWE, carving out her own path in the women's division with her ruthless aggression and unyielding determination. She had aligned herself with the Judgment Day, a faction that thrived on chaos and destruction. But despite their dark undertones, there was something about Rhea that resonated with Jey. She was fiercely loyal to those she trusted, and she fought for what she believed in, even if it meant standing alone. In many ways, she reminded him of himself. He had spent years being loyal to Roman Reigns and the bloodline, doing everything in his power to uphold the family's legacy. But in the end, it had all become too much. The pressure, the manipulation, the constant questioning of his own identity, it had driven him to a breaking point. Rhea's message was a reminder that he wasn't alone in his struggle. There were others who understood what it meant to break free from the chains that bound them, to forge their own path, even if it meant going against everything they had known. He thought about his response for a long time. What could he say that wouldn't sound cliché or insincere? Rhea was someone who valued authenticity, and he wanted to meet her on that level. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he typed out a reply, "Needed to stand on my own. Appreciate the respect, Rhea. You're one of the few who gets it." He sent the message and immediately felt a sense of relief. It wasn't much, but it was the truth. And if there was one thing he had learned in this business, it was that honesty was often the hardest thing to come by. To his surprise, Rhea responded almost immediately, "We all gotta do what's right for us. Keep your head up, Jey. The road ahead ain't easy, but it's worth it." Jey couldn't help but nod in agreement as he read her words. The road ahead wasn't easy, he knew that better than anyone. But Rhea was right. It was worth it. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was in control of his own destiny. As the night wore on, Jey found himself thinking more and more about Rhea's message. It wasn't just the words themselves that stuck with him, it was the underlying connection he felt with her. They were both warriors, fighting battles that others couldn't begin to understand. They both knew what it meant to be trapped by expectations, to feel the weight of the world on their shoulders, and to still push forward, no matter the cost. The next week on SmackDown, Jey found himself backstage, preparing for his match. He was running through his usual pre-match routine when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Jey." He turned around to see Rhea Ripley standing there, her presence as commanding as ever. She wore her signature leather jacket, and her dark eyes were fixed on him with an intensity that made it clear she wasn't here for small talk. "Rhea," Jey greeted her, nodding in acknowledgement. She crossed her arms over her chest, a slight smirk playing on her lips. "You ready for tonight?" Jey shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Always." Rhea steadied him for a moment before speaking again. "Look, I didn't come here to give you a pep talk or anything. But I meant what I said. Respect, Jey. You've got guts walking away from the bloodline." Jey met her gaze, feeling the weight of her words. "Had to do what was right for me." Rhea nodded, as if she understood exactly what he meant. "You're stronger than you think. Don't forget that." Jey felt a surge of determination course through him at her words. There was something about Rhea's presence that was both grounding and empowering, and he found himself grateful for the unexpected connection they had formed. "Thanks, Rhea," he said sincerely. "Means a lot coming from you." She gave him a small nod before turning to leave, but before she walked away, she paused and looked back at him. "And Jey? Don't let anyone tell you who you're supposed to be. You define that." With that, she walked away, leaving Jey standing there, her words echoing in his mind. He had always known that his journey wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, he felt truly ready to face whatever came his way. As he stepped out onto the ramp that night, the roar of the crowd filling his ears, Jey Uso knew one thing for certain: he was done living in anyone else's shadow. This was his time, his story, and he was going to write it his way. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew Rhea Ripley would be watching, cheering him on in her own way, as he took his first steps on this new path.